Okay, welcome back to Tokyo Ghoul Re. Yes, I'm reviving this old series. Why? Because I have something related to the Tokyo Ghoul franchise to discuss. Now, why did I pick this one? Because this is the last video I did, and I looked it up. Apparently, it's been almost 3 years to talk about anything related to Tokyo Ghoul. Yeah, 3 years. Alright, this one I'm discussing. At the time, I thought this was the last one released for this series of stuff for Tokyo Ghoul. It's the light novels. Here we have Tokyo Ghoul Past. I thought initially this was the last book, but it turns out there actually was a book published and it was set during Re. I haven't read it yet, and as far as I know, there's no English release for it yet. This is Tokyo Ghoul Past, where all the stories of this book basically take place before the very first chapter of the Tokyo Ghoul manga. Now, there are 6 stories in here. Oh yeah, by the way, this book is 152 pages long. Not bad length for this book. Now, each story focuses on a different character, based on the titles. By the way, love the cover. Here's a full-page spread of the interior. I think this is done by the actual creator himself. Shu Igisia. Yeah. Book is written by Shin Tawa. It was an absolute great job with the story. Oh yes, definitely. Now, some of the stories by their names, you're probably thinking, must focus on this character. Now, basically, of these stories, story 1 and 4 are connected. Loosely, mind you. Different kind is focused on Toka. Yes, the female lead of the series. And her brother is in the story. This is set roughly, I'd say, about 2 to 3 years prior to events of the series. Where this is before she joined the coffee shop. And before she went to school. Before she met her friend, too. Where she, at one point of the story, she, on her own, just happened to come across a little boy looking for his mother. And basically, and then, of course, his father finds him, too. And, of course, she didn't do anything wrong. She just handed off to him. And, of course, she mentions that to the father that he was looking for his mother. And he said that's impossible due to the fact she'd been dead for she passed away several years prior. And, of course, the little boy basically said that she was lying. Though later on, basically, he does talk to her privately. Well, at least, basically. And, well, then, of course, confirm about the fact that boy is actually grieving for the death of his mother. Though later on, he is attacked by ghouls. And basically, Toka's brother, yes, her brother, Ayato, saves the little boy. Of course, he doesn't do anything, though his father is killed. The little boy himself is later seen in the 4th story of the book, Insecurity. I believe this is the 2nd one because they mentioned, oh yeah, father died. Yes. Now this one, I want to talk about this. Even technically it's the 4th story, it's connected to the 1st one. Mostly to the little boy. They don't list the kid's name, but it's the little boy. And the fact he was killed by ghouls. This is focused on a couple characters, at least about 3 characters. Yes, it is focused on these 3 following characters. It is focused on Akira Muto. Yes, she's actually here in the book. Her father is here as well, along with, I believe, his partner. Let's see. Well, basically focus on her and, well, just basically her time and, of course, investigating some ghouls. That's simply put what gist of it is. Yeah, it's an interesting story. Now, as for 2nd story, this one's quite interesting because it focuses on Kaneki. Yes, the start of the series, which, by the way, he is actually right here, the one with the book. Yep, that's Ken. The one who's kneeling down, that's Rise. That's Hyde. Let's see. I don't know who... no, that's Toka with the red scarf there. Now, the Ken story is quite interesting. This is set roughly, I'd say, about 2 years prior to the rest of the series, because eventually he's a sophomore. Of course, I think it was mentioned in the series that he was a freshman in college before he became a ghoul. So this story, it's revealed that, okay, so his mother passed away, because that's been well established in the series, and she died because, as a result, basically, multiple times, however, her sister kept frequently asking her for money. And, of course, the woman was sick and couldn't take care of her only child. So she died, so Ken is living with his aunt. His aunt, who actually is a terrible person. Doesn't give a damn by him at all. Nope. And, of course, Ken is still a reader, and he basically is also doing the story that he actually kept all his father's books. Like, right after he passed away, because he mentioned his father died several years prior to the series, like many years prior. I think he mentioned his father died when he was 10, and his mother died when he was about 13, 14-ish. He's basically in high school now. And then at one point, he's actually come across the kitchen, come across a fancy refrigerator. And he points out, though, that's bought with his mom's money, which he's not very happy with that. Also, despite the fact she frequently kept asking her for money, she basically is living a much better life than what he and his mother living through. His mother, the way it's described basically in this book and what's shown in the anime and shown in the manga, is that they were nearly poor, though they had some money and they had terrible living experience. My only guess is the reason why they put him with his aunt, because she was probably his only living blood relative. But I'm kind of thinking like, okay, then what about, I don't know, how about his father's family? That's something strange, though, about Kaneki. His father's family is never mentioned in the series. I don't think his father is ever mentioned by name. Yep, and of course, his best friend Hyde is here, who is basically the closest thing he has to a brother, because clearly, like, his own sister, the family, his mother's family doesn't give a damn about him. Not at all, for, like, no reason at all. Oh, and by the way, she even points out to, like, his aunt points out to Ken that she doesn't care about him. It was only the money. Yep, she was using her own sister for money. Yeah, just so she could basically buy this fancy place. And at one point, she does something really, really stupid. Like, one point in the story, you have Ken basically, who had borrowed some magazines from Hyde, and then, of course, he comes home to basically return after reading the stuff he borrowed from him, and all the stuff threw away, including his father's books. And he basically confronts, what happened to my stuff? Oh, I threw it in a recycle, because your room was a mess. Yeah, and then he talks to Hyde about it, and then Hyde confronts his aunt about it. He's like, well, I heard you threw away some of Ken's books, some of Ken's stuff. Some of that stuff was mine. Like, oh, go to recycle place. And they find his magazines really easily. And they want to find the books. And of course, make a decision that as soon as they graduate, he's going to place of his own. Which, that's basically what he does in the main series. He gets his own apartment. As what happens to the apartment in this series, it's never actually explained. It's like if you read the manga, like half of this series, like even the anime, they never mention what happened to his apartment. Like, did he move out? Because he just basically stopped living there for just some unexplained reason. Yep, but it's an absolute really good story, in my opinion. Probably the best story of the whole book. Yep. Female fatality. Well, who obviously this one's focused on? It's Rise. Yes, though she's not really focused character in the story, despite the fact she's here. She doesn't get a lot to do here. Mostly, just basically focus on one of the other characters. It is a focus on Bunjo, a guy who's in love with Rise. Despite the fact at one point Rise dated Kaneki. It's nothing really right home about here when it comes to the story, but it's mostly focused on Rise. In the case of matching, I don't remember exactly what it's focused on. Devil Ape. The guy who's Devil Ape. The guy who claims, oh yeah, here comes Devil Ape. Devil Ape is basically awesome. Yes, it is the guy who actually is Devil Ape. A guy by the name of Enji Koma. Yep. Oh, yeah, now I remember what matching is about. Yeah. It's basically the story of how Nasaki started his relationship with his girlfriend. Yep, started that romance. Yeah, I just remember now while reading the characters in the book. I'm like, that's what the book is about. It's a very good story. I gotta admit, it's actually one of the more better stories in the book. I would say definitely the best story of the book is Ken's story. That would rank number one here as the best story here. I would say second best story is a three-way tie between the first, fourth, and the fifth story. Yes. I would say definitely in a way the Devil Ape story. Here's the thing about Devil story, is really short. Yes. And if you're curious for the page length these stories, here's one for you. The first story is exactly 28 pages. The second story is 26. Third story, also 26. The fourth story is exactly 26 pages. The fifth story, this one's quite lengthy. This one's roughly 26 pages. The final story is like really short. Yeah. It's interesting, like all the stories about the same, about 26 pages. The last story is roughly about 20 pages. Yeah, it is really short. It's mostly in the way a nothing story. I mean, it's basically that, along with the Female Fatale, are the two weakest stories in this whole entire book. But basically, it's a good book, definitely. It's really short, and you could probably get through it in just basically like a day or two at most. That's all I'm going to do this one. As for basically my ranking for this particular book, I'm going to give this book an 8 out of 10. It felt like a bit of a step down from the last book. I would say of the 3 books released so far for Tokyo Ghoul, I love the first book, especially since it featured a story that was actually adapted for an OVA, Pictures, which featured the debut of the female photographer who's commonly associated with the Gourmet Ghoul show, I think his name is. This one, I do think was kind of necessary, because it did kind of explore a story for some of these characters, like, before the events of the series. I would say probably the only characters you could probably say that don't really need to have a story in this book is the owner of the Anaku. The reason being because the series actually explains the guy's damn backstory. I would say one person who I kind of felt this though probably should get a little bit of story set before the events of the series. How about the female writer who Ken Kaneki is a big fan of? Yeah, the one who's a horror writer. And here's kind of the strange thing about this woman. She apparently developed an attraction to him. Yeah, despite the fact she didn't know him very well at that point, because she was a celebrity, Ken was a nobody, and yet she apparently fell in love with him. Yeah, that does occasionally happen in some stories where sometimes basically a lot of the time, usually a guy usually falls in love with a smoking hot celebrity. This is one of those rare times where the celebrity falls in love with a fan, but doesn't end up with him. Nope. As a matter of fact, she's one of a few characters actually in love with Ken over the course of the series. There's also Toka. There's also one of his students from Tokyo Ghoul. She apparently had a thing for him too. Rise, not really per se. She kind of liked him, mostly so she can eat him. But she was never actually she was actually not even romantic and interested in him. I think Ken had basically a crush on her per se, but it didn't go anywhere after the disaster that was their first date, which resulted in Rise's apparent death at the start of the series. But in the case of the characters, I would say the one character whose relationship with Ken basically developed really well over the course of the franchise is probably his relationship with Toka. These two, I mean, it was basically kind of hinted at over the course of the series that Ken had a thing for Toka. And though in the case of the two of them, Toka had a thing for him prior to them officially meeting. But then eventually, of course, she would basically kind of emotionally, verbally abuse him sometimes. But she would later in the way fall in love with him, marry him, and have a child with him. A girl. Yes. And it is by far the only, let's just say, the only, like, male lead, Ken Kaneki. He's the only one who gets married. And, of course, post-time skip when he has started a family. And the first child he has is a girl. And I pointed this out also, even he agrees. That's actually quite interesting. Because anybody could easily point out, though, whenever a character like does a post-time skip, what's usually the child that a guy has with a girl he likes in the course of the series? What's the first child he has first? A boy. Yes, it's always a boy. Though Austin himself has pointed out, though, to me, that I do agree with him. This is another character he's voiced to. The first child he had was a girl. It was the character from Fairy Tail. Yes, the cowboy who was Biscuit's husband. I don't remember his name. Yeah, they had a daughter in the series. Though that was another character he voiced that had a girl. But in the case of a male lead of the series, where the first child he has is a girl, well, in the case of a manga perspective, this is the only one I can think of that ever did this. Yes, this has happened in some light novels, like in the case of of Freya, where the guy adopts the girl but doesn't have a child with her, the mother at that point. But can you think of any other series where, like, when you have a time skip and the guy is married to his love interest and they have a child? And can you think of any other one besides this one where the first child is not a boy? I mean, yeah. In the case of something like, let's say, Naruto, for example, he had a boy and a girl. Yes. Or look at, let's say, Goku, for example. When he got married, he had 2 boys. Yeah, he had 2 boys. Though Vegeta himself did have a girl eventually, but he had a boy first, then a girl. That's the gist of it. But there have been some supporting characters who occasionally had a girl first. The only character I can think of, aside from Biscuit and her husband, and then of course Ken having a girl, is Sasuke and Sakura having Sadara. But as for male lead, Ken Kaneki is the only one to actually have a girl that I know of. Okay? Yeah, and that's particularly it for this particular review. I don't have any videos planned for today. You probably think, what about Comic History? That might happen today eventually. But I thought that One Piece might be released today. I thought the newest episodes. I looked it up. Yeah, it took me a little bit to find the actual article. And it turns out, no, it's not released today. It's actually coming out tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. Which, that's going to be interesting. Yep. But until you see the next video, bye.